You're probably watching this because you want to hack and slash through evil, playing God of War, or playing Doom Eternal while on the go. Absolutely, you can do that. You probably want to finish that mission or that quest playing Cyberpunk or playing Elden Ring while waiting for the train. Go for it. You probably want to run over some stuff, get it out of your system while playing Grand Theft Auto 5, while taking a dump. Or maybe you just want to shoot some webs, sling between buildings, playing the new Spider-Man remastered in a corner of your house, all cozy. I get you. But not everything about the Steam Deck is as straightforward as it may seem. You need to think about a few things before you make your final purchase decision. And I want to help you make that. Because at the end of it all, this device may not entirely be for you. So stay tuned. Now, it was about a year ago when I was in line when I reserved my space to get the Steam Deck. It's finally here with a bootload of nostalgia, taking me back to my teenage years with my PlayStation Portable. Those were some good times. But while I was waiting for this device, I obviously went over a few reviews and they added to the hype quite a bit. So the question is, did it meet my expectations? Well, the simple answer, yes and no. There are a few things to consider, and I want to obviously go through them one by one. But before I do that, guys, please do consider subscribing to my channel. It gives me a lot of encouragement. I do want to continue spreading awareness and appreciation for all the things that technology can do around us. So I see two main use cases for the Steam Deck, right? The first one is the more elitist one, which is you already have a gaming setup, you already have a powerful gaming device, and you want to use a Steam Deck as an extension of those games when you're out and about. And the second use case, which I'm more interested in, is making this your primary gaming device. And there's something to be said for both use cases. I do want to clarify one more thing before I move ahead. My review is based on the Steam Deck in its most stock, pure format. There are no mods, there's no windows, no fancy add-ons, just as Valve intended. Although I would say that I did attempt at running the new Modern Warfare on this through the Battle.net platform. I came close, but I couldn't go all the way. So if you're willing to put in the work, you can definitely do crazy things with this device, but I'm not going to complicate things and talk about those. Let's just quickly get the specs out of the way too. So this is an AMD machine essentially. It's running the Zen 2 CPU, which is a quad core, with the RDNA graphics, with 1 gigabyte of VRAM, and it has 16 gigabytes of low powered, which is LPDDR5 RAM. It has a 7-inch screen, which has a resolution of 1280 by 800. It gets as bright as 400 nits, and it has a refresh rate of 60 hertz. And all of this comes at around 0.7 of a kilo. I am going to consciously skip like the physical walk around of this because essentially to me this is a giant controller with a screen in the middle. The closest thing that comes to it by comparison is the Nintendo Switch. That's fairly popular, although this is less colorful and less toy-like, and this is so much more impressive than the Switch. I will, however, touch upon the portability factors of this device more towards the end. In the meantime, I'll focus more on the performance aspect of this device. So in terms of technical capabilities, I think of this as a PlayStation 3.5 or a PlayStation 4. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much by today's standard, but this is running the latest AAA titles right here. And your current systems, your laptop or your desktop, would probably be running the previous generation of games very well, but they may struggle running the newer games. But this is right now promising everything out of the box. So I have the 256 gigabyte version right here, so the middle option of what Valve offers. So this comes with that hard case, but doesn't come with that anti-reflective coating. Now those technical specs that I mentioned earlier, when we put those to paper today, they don't sound much at all. It's a quad core with a single gigabyte of VRAM. That takes me back almost 10 years. Like, where are all of those massive textures going to go? But I don't know how, but in this screen size, like when you take those specs and put it to this screen size, somehow something makes sense. Now, the specs that I mentioned earlier, once you put those to paper, they don't sound like much at all. It's a quad-core CPU with a single gigabyte of video memory, and that's not a lot at all by modern standard. I'll give you an example. God of War. It's a very demanding game, like the newer one that was released on PC. Whether you have a desktop or a laptop, it needs a lot of resources. Playing around this with decent graphic settings, I felt the game was running just fine. I did feel, however, that it could be a little bit smoother, so I went into the FPS overlay and realized that it was actually locked at 30 frames. 30 frames, it doesn't sound like a lot at all. It's actually pretty bad. But It's difficult to explain. When you put those to the screen, my mind perceived to be much higher than 30 frames. For me, it was like maybe 50. So it wasn't bothering me as much as it could have if I was playing the same game on my Razer Blade. Because if frames fall even slightly below 60 on my Blade, it's immediately obvious. On this one, not so much. Could be the size of the screen again, but that's how my mind was perceiving it. Like the performance was being perceived as much higher than what it actually was. Now, just for context, the PlayStation 4 actually maxed out at 30 frames a second, and you guys were more than happy on 30 frames. This is the time where PC gamers were, making a fuss about 60 frames. Now, I actually thought that God of War was one of the few games that was actually running at 30 frames. Most games would easily give you around 50 and 60. Like, for example, Grid, FIFA 22, Witcher, like those were working beautifully, locked at 60 frames. And on this screen, 60 frames were being perceived as 100 frames or even more. It was as smooth as it possibly could get, and I had no complaints at all. Now, bear with me, I'm trying to make a case for the Steam Deck as your primary gaming device. It very much has the potential to do so. I realized that if you're playing a game on, for example, a Razer Blade, you're running games at 1440p resolution at maxed out settings, and the Steam Deck is half of that. But at no point did I feel like I would enjoy that game more on a desktop or on that laptop. I think Valve is giving a very simple and elegant message from the Steam Deck, which is just play the damn game and enjoy it. Stop flexing 8K and talking about 5,000 frames a second and talking about your fancy desktop build with RGB. It doesn't matter. They're irrelevant. Just enjoy the damn game. Now, make no mistake, if you really are a person coming from this powerful desktop build, your senses may be a little spoiled and it might take some time for you to sort of get used to the Steam Deck. But I assure you, if you give it a chance, it will definitely grow on you, as it did grow on me. Now, there are some shortcomings that I want to talk about a bit later, but right now, like the key thing that the Steam Deck offers is big power in a small package, in a portable package. And as the packaging of the Steam Deck itself says, your games are going places. Now, the question here becomes, are all of your games going places? Simple answer, no. And there are two major reasons for that. The first and most obvious one is not all games on your Steam library are compatible with the Steam Deck. I'll give an example of some games from my own game library that are not compatible with the Steam Deck. Watch Dogs 2, Halo Master Chief Collection, which I understand is because of anti-cheat. Rainbow Six Siege, for the same reason probably. Tropico 4, Sleeping Dogs, Mortal Kombat 11. I've actually heard that it can actually run, but I didn't try it. Gears 5, same reason, anti-cheat. If you go into the game, it will actually tell you why a game is compatible or not compatible, actually. So it's really good that way. Elder Scrolls, I think they're adding compatibility there. Dishonored 2, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition is apparently unsupported. And I'm guessing that could be because, well, you play a real-time strategy game using a mouse and keyboard. That's not to say that you can't do that with the Steam Deck. You can easily connect it to a Type-C hub, which could have video output. It could have all the space for your peripherals. You can plug and play, and it will work like a regular desktop. But that's at the end of it. Valve is putting in a lot of resources to make sure most of your Steam library is compatible with the Steam Deck, and there are new updates every day. But you have to realize there are a lot of AAA titles working perfectly well on the Steam Deck, and if you want to make a fuss about it, before you purchase, by all means, go to your Steam library. At the bottom right, you'll find the compatibility sort of layer, and you can figure out if your respective game is functional with the Steam Deck currently or not. Now, another thing you'll find when you do that is an orange exclamation mark saying that sort of partial compatibility. Now, don't get turned off by that. Initially, I discounted those games completely, but compatibility issues were very, very minor. I'll give you an example. Like FIFA 22 came with that exclamation mark, and the only reason for that was you need to log into Origin, which is Electronic Arts' own like PC platform, to launch its games. So it's just an additional launcher before you can start to play the game. It's not a big deal at all. However, playing the game, it did remind me that regardless of whichever platform I'm playing on, PlayStation, PC, or Steam Deck, I still suck at FIFA. Now, the second reason why your games may not be going places would be actually your storage. You look at this device and you think like games shouldn't take as much space as it does on your PC, but that was pretty stupid of me to assume they would take the full amount of space as it does on your PC. So as an example, like modern games would take at least 100 gigabytes, and games from previous generations could take like 50 gigabytes. So you won't be able to keep like what, like three, four games on this at one time. Now, thankfully, Valve has provided us with a micro SD card slot, which you can expand up to a terabyte of storage. And I think that's the amount of storage you can actually get for it. Don't get 512 gigs, don't get 256 gigs. That's not going to be enough. You have to realize that our laptops nowadays, they come at a minimum of 512 gigs of storage, and this needs to be treated as a laptop as well. Your games are going to take up as much space. The thing is, because it's sort of hot swappable, you can argue that yeah, you can just switch your drives around, but in terms of convenience, in terms of like a seamless experience, for you to really enjoy this device, especially if you've got a big Steam library, you should go with a terabyte of storage. This is going to cost you around roughly $200. You could also say you could just change like the SSD that's built into this, but my experience has been, because it's the 2230 variant, which is not the full size SSD, and it's not very popular in the market. So you might actually struggle a little bit for finding storage in that sort of format. And when you do, they can actually be more expensive than your micro SD card. And you know what? There's not a lot of reason for you to focus on changing the internal SSD, because the micro SD card is going to function as good as the SSD. So like game load times and performance, there's a very negligible difference between them. I would, however, stress that if you're going to get a micro SD card, get one with the U3 and A2 classification. U3 basically means a transfer speed of 30 megabytes a second. Try not to get anything lower than that, like a U2 or an A1 drive, because that's where games can sort of struggle a little bit. Another thing I did want to add there is, I thought I could just transfer games from my desktop to this because they're using the exact same files. But for some reason, when a drive is formatted from the Steam Deck, it makes my regular Windows device sort of difficult to read. I'm guessing that's because of the Linux platform. So yeah, you're gonna have to download games directly via the Steam Deck. So there's also a third qualifier for your games going places, and that one is also obvious, which is battery life. If you read the official sort of statement, it says that it would offer you up to 8 hours of runtime. That's not very practical, because we have to assume that whenever you turn this device on, it would be to just play games and do nothing else. In my experience, if you're playing like a really heavy game, for example, God of War or Forza Horizon 5, you're probably going to get 1 minute per percentage. So with a full battery, you can get 100 minutes of playtime. I know that doesn't sound like a lot at all, but it does get better. Like if you're playing something that a little less resource hungry, like FIFA, I felt like I got more than 2.5 hours. Something lighter, like a 2D platform or a 3D platformer, you can get north of 3 hours. It all depends on how much your game is consuming. Also, like my experiences was set around 80% brightness, which I thought was plenty. But the good news is that Valve stuck with the Type-C charging port. It could have been a proprietary port. Thank God they didn't do that. But it's a very universal adapter now. Your laptop charger is probably going to be Type-C adapter, and you can easily use it to charge this as well. Based on the adapter that came with this device, it requires 45 watts of power, and our laptops usually require 65 watts. So you're easily well catered for. 45 watts is not bad at all, because you can use your existing power banks to actually charge this up as well. I mean, it would need to be a power bank which supports that wattage, but they're more commonly available nowadays. Allow me to build some context. My Razer Blade needs 230 watts of power, and modern power banks do not have that kind of output these days. Even when you're in an aircraft, you won't get that sort of power. Sockets in your seat would roughly usually provide more than 65 watts of power, which is perfectly fine for your Steam Deck. When the Blade is not actually connected to a power source, it will drop your refresh rate under 60 hertz, and you'll still get around playtime of like 2 hours, which is probably less than a Steam Deck in the real world anyway. As a portable device, I think the Steam Deck is making a pretty good case there. Now, when you do run out of juice on your Steam Deck, you may have to spend some time being tethered to the wall, because it takes about 100 minutes for it to charge from 0 to 80%. And then I think roughly about another 100 minutes to charge from 80 to 20 as a way for it to preserve its battery health. I did also want to quickly talk about the controls on this device. Out of the box, it has those initial introductions just to show you where things are, but I felt that didn't do this device justice at all. So if you get this device, the first thing you should do is go to the Steam store and get the game called Desk Job. And it is because of that game I was able to better appreciate the controls on this device. And I also discovered that it has a gyroscopic sensor, and it gets activated if you put your thumb on the right thumbstick and sort of swivel this around for you to look within spaces in the game itself. I didn't find a lot of use for that within the games, but it's a neat feature, and there may be opportunities to apply that in games in the future. Another different thing about this controller than your regular buttons all around are actually these touchpads below the left and right thumbstick. This is basically a miniaturized version of your regular touchpad on your laptop. It's got a really nice little haptic motor underneath. So it's got a really nice tactile feel in which you can tell if your thumb is reaching towards the edges of that touchpad. So you can think of the left and right touchpads as alternatives to the left and right joysticks. So the right joystick is usually used to look around a room within the game. You can do the same by using this thumbstick right here. So you can especially use this within your first-person shooters for a bit more accuracy. You might need to spend some time getting used to it, but I think that's a pretty neat feature. And obviously you can click it as well for any further functions. In Doom, it is used as a melee attack. Same thing sort of happens if you. It will carry on the similar mapping as that for your joystick. You press this. And the touchpad on the left side is actually an alternative to the D-pad right here. So basically you can use these as arrow keys, whether you press the up, down, left, right ones there. Yeah, for example, in this game, they have not added that feature to be using this with its gyroscopic ability. So another area where the right and left touchpads come very much in handy are actually during browsing. You can install Google Chrome on this and it works exactly like the desktop app. And you use the right one as a mouse cursor and the left one to actually scroll around. Also, these two become very relevant when you want to type stuff in. So you could actually type in what you want using the touchscreen here. Because this device is obviously so wide, you will find it difficult to reach out and type whatever you want inside there using the touchscreen. So what do? You basically use these touchpads, and what happens is that your thumbs become individual hands on each side of the keyboard, right? So basically you type things in using that sort of format. So if I want to check out Google News, I can just sort of use this right here. Just like how my hand would be placed on a keyboard on the left and right hand side, I can use that to enter my text right here. But I think that when you use it more often, you could build up a lot of speed. Again, using the right hand side as the cursor and the left hand side as a way to scroll around. Talking about the 4 buttons on the back, I get to use them during games. You can set up individual commands for them using the in-game menus if you want. The 2 Steam-specific buttons on this controller. There's this button on the right-hand side, which is basically like a toolbar for you to access your settings, brightness, audio levels, battery, things of that nature. And on the left-hand side, there's this Steam button right here, which is basically like a home bar for you to quickly access your game library and launch games from there. Now, because I don't use a regular controller often, I don't know exactly what to expect from joystick, so I did give this over to a PlayStation-centric friend of mine. His feedback was that these thumbsticks felt a little shallow and a little restricting. I compared them physically with other controllers, like the other PlayStation 5 or Xbox controller, and I felt like they were fairly similar, except like the tip of this joystick was a little bit narrower than what you'd usually find on an Xbox or a PlayStation 5 controller. Also, like the shoulder buttons on this, at least on my unit, they didn't feel as tight. There's like a little dead zone at the beginning of it, which could be a little misleading. I do want to mention some other little things as well from this device. For example, haptics. The haptics on my unit right here were absolutely non-existent. They call it game rumble, and I can't believe how loosely that term has been used here. I basically don't feel literally anything from the motors inside. And I looked it up online, and I realized that there are other users out there who had the same issue, and some who did not. And those who had an issue had to RMA the device and get a fix from Valve, and then they had it all working. Also, the brightness level, it does say 400 nits, and I feel like that's pretty bright. But for me personally, I felt like it could have been brighter. When you take this device outside, you could struggle a little bit to see all the finer details inside. It is most at home when indoors. Even like the store experience, like the Steam store experience within this device felt a little clunky. It felt like an experimental browser, which used to hang and freeze and sometimes used to get confused as to where it should get input from the joystick or from the touch screen. I found that a little bit annoying. Even like the whole Steam OS itself, it felt like an overlay on top of another OS, which is Linux, and that is actually the case here. But to the normal sort of consumer, it shouldn't feel that way. It should feel seamless. It used to get stuck and freeze, and sometimes the animations between menus, they weren't as smooth as they should be. Maybe it's something that could get fixed down the line. Games in general, I felt were taking a bit longer to download than they would on my laptop or my desktop. It would peak out to the full potential of my internet bandwidth, but it wouldn't be able to sustain it, and it would come to like an average, like a 60-70% of the full bandwidth of it. Also, when it's done downloading, it takes a very long time to validate and install files. That makes it a little bit difficult for you to sort of uninstall and reinstall games while on the go. Related to that, I wanted to save time, and I thought I could load games directly onto the micro SD card from my laptop. Like the same game I play on my laptop, it's using the same files on this, so should be an easy copy paste. But because this is running off a Linux platform, I think like the SSD's format wasn't sort of syncing up. Pretty sure there were workarounds with that, but they didn't come to me out of the box. Also, I did wish that the Steam Deck would work more intuitively as a media device. It offers another use case for a consumer. I'm talking about streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Prime. The Steam Store does not have dedicated apps for that. It would have been nice had it come baked into the OS itself, but that's not the case. You can use the Chrome browser to actually access any streaming site you want, and it will work exactly as it does on your desktop computer. Now, I wasn't entirely convinced, based on what I shared earlier, that I could position the Steam Deck as a primary gaming device. So what I did was, as a simulation, I picked out a game that I've never played before and I've known very little about, and I decided to start playing it on the Steam Deck. The game I had in mind was actually Death Stranding. And it's an interesting choice because it's a very story-rich game which requires a lot of immersion, great visuals, great soundtracks, and because it's like a portable device with a small screen, I thought I would struggle a little bit to get engaged in the game. But I was wrong, dead wrong, because somehow this tiny device was able to output visuals as intended, and I felt very much engaged with the game. This also gave me a reason to experience like the onboard speakers on this. There's nothing special about it, but they were loud and they were clear, and that's what matters. Just good enough for you to use them if you don't have headphones handy. Now, I hate admitting to this, that when I started making this review, I was pretty sure I was going to conclude that for me personally, it would make more sense to invest in a gaming laptop than this device right here, because it offers more use cases. You can use it for productivity and also to play games on the go. One thing that goes against it in terms of portability is actually its size. It's not like you can shove it in your pocket. It's too thick, it's too broad. Your Nintendo Switch very much can fit in your pocket, but this one, it's not possible. So you still need a bag to take it around with you. And if you're gonna have a bag, then why not just have a laptop instead? But I think that's really missing the point. The Steam Deck offers you immediate access to your game library just on the go. And it does it in a very convenient way. I mean, it makes opening up a laptop and booting it up more of a fuss. With this, you just pick it up while it's lying around, press the power button, and continue your game wherever you last left it off. The Steam Deck, I think, is for the real fans of video games. No matter you're interested in a story-driven game or brainless shoot 'em ups, the Steam Deck removes all kinds of barriers for you to just jump in and enjoy the game. This device actually reminded me that you don't need fancy specs to get lost in a game. We tend to get distracted a lot by the bells and whistles. And I remember a long time ago playing Max Payne at less than 30 frames a second at low settings on a dusty old PC, and I still remember it today to be one of the best games I ever played, like even with that experience. I mean, sure, you would probably end up spending near $1,000 with a few games, with protection, with the extra storage and whatnot for the Steam Deck, and that very much comes in the same budget as that of a PlayStation 5, but you're missing the point. With this device, you can curl up in any corner of the house and making a space for you to play your games. You don't have to call dibs on the television or make a booking on your living room. Even if you're the sort who's blessed with with a television in your bedroom and a space for you to play there, you still need to scamper off there and sort of get tied down. With this, you're free. You just pick up the damn thing and enjoy your games. I do have doubts over its future proofing because while I was making this video, AMD released its Zen 3 architecture with RDNA 3 graphics, and who knows, down the line there could be Steam Deck 2. I sure hope so. But considering today, now, the Steam Deck is doing a very good job at dealing with all the latest AAA titles. So conclusively, whether you're looking at this as an extension to your existing gaming setup or you're looking at this as your primary gaming setup, which is the one I was really interested in, I think it is definitely worth the investment. So thank you all for watching very much. If you liked this video, please do consider clicking the thumbs up button and letting me know. A subscription to my channel will obviously be awesome, and I'll try to keep making new content. All right, thanks guys.